Marine Captain Brian Latendry died earlier this month in an explosion in Iraq. He was 27, a husband and father, and he was buried in Arlington National Cemetery, a few miles from where he grew up. As America observes Memorial Day,
I have been directed by the President of the United States and the Commandant of the Marine Corps to inform you that today, 0530, your son was killed in action while in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Not very many of us can accomplish our goals or our dreams, and he always knew where he wanted to go, and he did it.
A Gold Star family is one who has lost a loved one serving in the United States military. It's a distinction no family ever seeks, a bond shared through sacrifice, remembrance, and profound loss. I'm Nick Latendry, and I've been a Gold Star sibling for over 18 years. In those 18 years, I've learned that while ceremonies fade, medals are stored away, and life continues, the story doesn't end for the families left behind. This podcast is dedicated to remembering those who gave everything for their country and to telling the lesser-known stories, the quiet, powerful journeys of grief, strength, resilience, and hope that follows after the flags are folded and the crowds disperse. These are Gold Star Stories. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening to the first episode of what I hope is mini of a series that I'm creating called Gold Star Stories. There's a whole side to this loss that we've all endured that goes beyond, after we've buried our loved ones. What happens after that? What happens to the families? What's the legacies that go on there? This is a generational thing that happens. It may have happened to my brother, but my children who never met him feel the repercussions of this sort of loss. So today we're going to be speaking to Kimberly Deck, whose husband, Sean, was a member of the Active 22. And if you're not sure what that is, we're going to get into that a little bit as well. But let's go ahead and welcome Kimberly. Kimberly, thank you so much for being, brave enough to be the first one to come on and speak to me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. The opportunity to share this is amazing.
The willingness to be vulnerable and understand, there is more to the story. I appreciate that right from the get-go. So I know that one thing that broke my heart immediately is when I reached out to you. You said, hey, I'm not sure that you want to talk to me or not because my husband was a member of the Active 22. He doesn't have the story. And my first thought was, you are so very wrong on that because there's so many people like you. And it's not just about him. It's about your story through this too. Just because of what happened to him, that can't all of a sudden just define you too, right? Your loss is no less valid than anybody else's. So that is what's important to me, is to be able to talk about all of these different aspects and find out what the stigma is, what's behind people's minds that all of a sudden come out and say, hey, your loss wasn't as important as anybody else's loss. And just kind of getting...
that it's not as important, and that's how it's viewed. It's more of the untalked about. We don't want to talk about that side of it. It's the darker side of the loss.
A lot of that still needs to be discussed. As dark as it may be, some of these stories are what connects people and makes people realize that they're not alone. And I'm sure as well as I do that community in all of this is a huge aspect of healing and understanding and feeling heard. Before we get into any more of that, because I'm sure I have plenty of thoughts, I will warn you as well, Kimberly, I'm ADHD as hell, so I will get off on a tangent. My wife will reel me back in, and we will edit it, and it's going to sound awesome. But not all of my tangents will make it on, I promise you. All right, so start a little bit by telling me about your husband and just a little bit about him in both service and outside of service.
Well, just a brief he started out enlisted. We met while surfing together. So he started off enlisted. We eventually had 2 beautiful children, my son and my daughter. And following his career after I got out, I started following his career, being his support system, his lifeline, as you well know that, military spouses become. He made chief, started pushing boots. And then as we got into Maryland area in his career, he chose to go warrant officer. Thinking long-term in the retiring after 30, that long-term career, what's best for it. So he chose to go officer, and warrant is the route he took. So that's what he did for his career. Outside of his career, he was a great father. He was, supportive for his kids. He loved motorbiking. While we were over in Guam, me and my son started diving. He picked that up. We started diving together. So he enjoyed being outside doing things. I hate lawn work. He loved lawn work, so anytime we had a yard, it was for him. I didn't want to touch it. He loved spending time out there doing it. He loved being outside, working on cars. The reason I can work on my Jeep as well as I can is because he made me. He had to take me out there, and instead of sitting there watching him, he'd make me get under the vehicle and teach me. So a lot of aspects, I'm so grateful for that, because now I have a Jeep, and anybody that's had a Jeep, we all know that, they're constant work. But we love to travel. He loved traveling. I can't say that everything was perfect with us. We had our ups and downs, and unfortunately, it wasn't good when he passed away. So he had 20 years in, 21 years. Sorry, I'm thinking 23 years in. He got in 91, he passed in 2014, so 23 years in. He had 9 cruises in, or 9 deployments, one way or another, whether it's land or sea. And his final deployment, he came home. He was about home a month. Things weren't good between us. In all honesty, I was getting ready to leave him. You find a lot of these stories, you start diving into the backstories, you'll find a lot of the same symptoms. The cheating, the lying, the dishonesty is starting to come out. And that's one thing I thought maybe it was just my story, but as I speak to other spouses, I'm finding that's a common accord throughout. And I was leaving. I told him 2 days before that I was leaving. Well, Wednesday morning, he came into the bedroom because he had moved into the 4th bedroom. I didn't want him in my bedroom anymore. And we had tried talking, but he wanted to argue, and I was at that point done. It's not the first time that we've gone down this path, but it was my last time. And I kind of left the house, told him to fix my Trailblazer, took his car, went and had lunch with the CEO's wife, had a conversation with her because of everything going on. And that's who I was supposed to, when you're enlisted, you have the ombudsman to talk to, this, that, and the other. When you're an officer's wife, you talk to the CO's wife, the XO's wife. So those are the people you lean on. So I went and had lunch, had a conversation with her. As I got home, I found out I was locked out of the house. And I thought it was, his anger just got to the best of him. I started blowing up his phone. The remote on the car did not work to open the garage. The code on the garage that the kids used did not work. All the doors were locked. The back half of the house was all glass. No answer. I can't see any movement besides the cats. So blowing up the phone doesn't work. Blowing up the phone constantly I think I blew up the phone at least 45 minutes. No answer. I went ahead and took the smallest window, which was on the garage door and on the back side of the house, because I grew up where you don't put things on display. You don't talk about things. So the front of the house you keep pretty, you don't let the neighbors see what's going on. So I took it to the back of the house and I broke that window out. I was getting in my house. I had removed the key off his key ring before that, so I didn't have a key to open the door. I broke that window out, reached in, opened the door, and the garage was dark, and I'm walking to the house and I noticed he's on the garage floor. He had high blood pressure. He was in kidney failure. When we were in Guam, he had been medevac to Hawaii a couple times for kidneys. And so my automatic thought was, something medically stressed him out, high blood pressure, having a heart attack, whatever. I get down on the floor, I'm checking for a pulse to see a breath. I go to give him CPR, and that's when I realized what happened. because my hand went through his chest. We didn't have a lot of guns at the time. To be honest, I have more guns now than I did then. He took a 50 caliber black powder rifle to the chest. Yeah.
That's got to be an incredible weight for you to have on your shoulders after deciding that you essentially wanted to take control of your life and leave.
Yeah.
And then that's the repercussion that essentially you got from it. That's got to be an incredible amount of guilt that you carried for a second, I'm sure. Personally, I mean, obviously we know it's not it's not that, but having lived through stuff like myself, I understand that we misplace feelings often.
Very much so.
And I can only imagine the misplaced feelings that came from that sort of situation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the guilt, the anger, the raw emotions that built up. Years later, the anger, I'll be honest, the anger got to me years later because not only I found him, but it was left for my daughter to find him. Luckily, I circumvented that and got her out of there, but my son came up on the scene of ambulance, fire trucks, and everything, and they brought him into the ambulance because it wasn't him in the ambulance, it was me. Covered in everything. And that's what they brought him into the ambulance to see. So
How old was your son at the time?
17.
17.
My daughter was, here's the kicker. We buried him for my daughter's 14th birthday. Yeah. They wanted to bury him on her birthday, and I got him to push it to the day before because, yeah, that was her gift from her dad that year. Yeah.
That's a tough one. 14 and 17 and coming up on that scene as a 17-year-old, that's got to definitely have an impact on your life.
He had anger issues too. I was able to work out with his football coach. Exercise, spending energy is a great killer for burnt off rage. So he did a lot of weight training, a lot of football in the years. And I am so grateful to his school, his coaches, because they really stepped up to protect not only him, but my daughter. While we're at the funeral, the kids are coming up on the end of the year. Because this happened, he passed away May 28th. Funeral was June 5th. End of school year, they have all those tests, all those things that they have to jump through to graduate to the next grade. My son's coach actually stepped in to make sure that my kids were taken care of and they could miss all those tests that year.
That's fantastic.
I mean, the support system that they gave was amazing. For my anger, TAPS is an organization that is for military who lost brothers, sisters, daughters, husbands,
I've met Bonnie Carroll several times. Yep. I'm
Love
a
Bonnie.
big Bonnie Carroll fan.
Yeah. She is a huge, I don't know what I would have done without TAPS, Bonnie and Kim, and they
TAPS
started
is a very magical program to association, I think. Just for anybody that hasn't heard of it, that's essentially if we have any extra money to donate, like Amazon used to do their Smile Project where you could donate to any charity. That was the charity that we donated to every time.
This too.
My band, back when I played music, got to go and do 2 of the TAPS annual conventions and got to be part of all of that stuff. And it was amazing what they do for these families. So if anybody's looking for an additional cause, please just look into taps.org. It's fantastic and worth every donation that people make to it. But continue. Sorry.
You're fine. They started a program. So there is a hospital in Boston that does PTSD treatments for military. Well, TAPS came to them and turned that into for surviving widows. So they took, and as honored as I am to be one of the first, it tells you how bad I was. They took 9 of us on the worst cases who either witnessed or found our spouses and took us up there for treatment. And I wasn't going to go, and my kids looked at me and they said, "You need to go."
We often find that the people that need the help the most are the ones that deny it. And it's, looking back on it, of course, you can be like, yeah, I certainly did need it. But when you're in the moment, it's hard to get that help. And that's why having the support system there, people that actually know you and can tell those mood changes are so incredibly important in these times.
And I know a lot of my efforts went towards my kids, and I'll admit, I did not take care of myself the way I needed to. His command actually, for the first few months, babysat my ass. Basically, I don't know how else to put it. I wasn't eating. I lost the first month from the time he died. For the first 30 days at least, I lost 40 pounds instantaneously. I wasn't that I wasn't eating, I couldn't keep food down. So they were constant coming out, checking on me, do you know what's going on, this, that, and the other. But as surprising, as supportive as they were, and I love them all dearly, it quickly dries up. You go from being part of something to being nothing, and that's hard.
Yes, that is very well put. You're right. The community shows up very big at first. It's a lot of ceremonies. There's a lot of things that you're maybe included in, and then all of a sudden one day it dries out and you're left there with your thoughts wondering if anybody else is even still remembering
Right.
what you've gone through and what sacrifices were made. That's what I think is really tough too, is you've seen the TikTok channel that we've kind of started doing with these guys. As I'm going through these stories, I'm finding it hard to find pictures of these guys. Like, I should be able to find more than 3 pictures of somebody who dedicated their life to our country, right?
Right.
But that's kind of what happens, unfortunately, for the rest of society that has not been included in this sort of sacrifice, is they're able to move on and look at these as, oh, that's a cool story. Meanwhile, we're left here with this incredible baggage and, destruction throughout the entire families. And we're just supposed to be like, oh, nope, it's fine. It happened 19 years ago. So I'm good now. I can just move on. Yeah, I'll tell you right now, I've tried the moving on thing. I've tried all of it. It does not work. The only way to get through it, I think, is to embrace it and to talk about it. And I've hidden so many of my stories because I've had them invalidated by people, telling me that I'm being selfish or that's not truly how it happened. And that's part of why we're doing this podcast, is I want to give other people the ability to tell me their truth without getting the interruptions, and to have somebody that, hopefully understands a little more from their side of the perspective. I know I can't understand everything as a Gold Star sibling, but there is certainly some aspects of this grief that we can all connect on together, regardless of the role. Now, this is, I think, a good way to jump into it, but with all of this happening, it becomes part of our identity, right? You just immediately, you're like, now I'm a Gold Star, widow. I'm a Gold Star sibling. I personally never asked for it, right? I was going through JROTC in high school. I did it for like 2 years, but I was out for 2 years by the time I was a senior in high school. My brother was killed. I was not doing it at that time. Was I going to go into the military or not? I don't know. But all of a sudden, one day, my life completely changes and I'm thrown into military ceremonies. And, oh, this is, this super important person. I'm 18. I don't really care. But now this has become my identity. I have to do these things or else my community is going to be like, why are you not involved? Did you feel like there was any obligations like that you just kind of got overwhelmed by? Or how did you retain your identity? I'm assuming that maybe TAPS in the program helped a little bit with your identity and keeping self.
I think so. I mean, the TAPS provided a lot of self-validation because I wasn't crazy for going through. One of my best friends that I met, her husband died we're a week apart, suicide, week apart. Her stories are a little different, and I definitely will share information on her so you can reach out to her.
Thank you.
There's a lot of similarities to our stories too. Like I said, a lot of the backgrounds, there's a lot of the same stuff that brings up. Having somebody to validate that I'm not crazy and feeling the way I felt, the anger, the loss, because as much as angry as I was for the stuff he did or what he had done, we were married 20 years. We had 2 kids. That was the life I chose, to support him, to be there for him, So that is a loss, losing him, losing my kid's father. the losses compound, and to feel that I'm not crazy for feeling this loss is okay. I'm okay to be angry at this, but it's still okay to be. And I'm not the only one going through all this. It helps validate a lot of that.
It does.
Being there for my kids and putting my kids first sidelined a lot of what I went through. So I was able to function. One thing about military, we're able to function on different levels. And that not only played in that day, but it played in, taking care of my kids. I was able to deal somewhat with my stuff, but sideline it to take care of my kids and make sure that they were okay. Because that was the most important thing to me, is making sure they were okay. I went to TAPS for my kids. Did it help me? Immensely. But my priority was to take care of them and be there, build them a support system, especially my son, because he was 17 going off into college the next, in another year. So I had to make sure I had 1 year to prep him to make sure he was okay, because one thing about suicide is that it is almost, something that gets passed down.
Hereditary, almost.
Yes. Sorry, thank you. I couldn't think of the word. So I have to watch my kids on a higher level because their dad did this. So now I have to watch, are they going to, go down the same path and follow their dad? And that is a true nightmare for anybody that's experienced the suicides.
Very heavy baggage to carry around with you. That is very, very heavy. As far as your husband goes, do you feel like his service was part of the reason that maybe led him down this road, or do you think it was just a mental thing? Was there PTSD involved at all, or was this just something that he was dealing with personally in his own life?
I honestly believe it's compounded by many different aspects. Personally, I know enough about his past that was brought to my attention that I know that hereditary issue is legit. But I also know medically some of the medicines that he was on, and that they changed his medicines while on a ship, while deployed. You're not supposed to do. And they changed it. Side effects are part of that. And also the fact that he was in a stateroom, which is a 2-person room. His roommate went home early. He worked and lived out of his stateroom, which does not help when you're isolated for 10 months. And yes, he did get out. He wasn't in complete isolation, but when you work and live out of that room, you spend more time in that room than you should, especially being on a boat where I know his patterns. He always took that dive into his own personal hell. So when he came back, I really thought I'd experienced this before, would come back. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case this time. But yeah, so I think between the stateroom, the medication, his own personal stuff, and then everything at the end, I think he just felt like he had nothing left, and it just, yeah.
So just everything compounded over. I understand. Okay. So I am a little more curious about the TAPS thing, if you're comfortable sharing any of that. You said that they had a breakthrough thing for you, and it seems like it worked. Is there anything that you can share with us on that?
It's a 2-week program in the hospital up there, and I wish I could remember the name of that program, but it's 2 weeks outpatient therapy. So you go up there and you spend 2 weeks up there. A lot of widows, a lot of family members, I'm sure it's not just widows, a lot of family members tend to, in a heavy grief, fall back into different categories: drugs, alcohol, sex, and shopping. And a lot of the treatments are based on trying to find a healthier path to cure that. I know some widows had more of the alcohol problem, and one part of their program is not to drink, choose healthier, exercise. So we did a lot of yoga, a lot of interpersonal therapies to work on our own issues. And then being able to come together and talk and enjoy afterwards, spend some time together, and kind of more of a peer therapy, of being able to talk to your peers. And TAPS is big on that, peer therapy programs and being able to talk. And I've got some widows that I consider family out of that program. But to see the changes in not only them, but myself, and I'll be honest, I didn't see changes. I didn't recognize changes in myself till years later and saying, you know what, that was probably the best thing for me. I wasn't there, but am I jumpy? Do I have PTSD because of it? People getting into my space, getting too close, makes me jumpy. Pressure. My husband used to say I could handle everything under pressure. I do work better under pressure. Pressure absolutely immobilized me at that point. To be able to work on being out in crowds, do I like them? No. Can I do it? Absolutely no. The family that's built through that whole system, and not only that class, but through the whole TAPS, yeah, it's amazing. Not only for that, but for my kids too. My son aged out, so he didn't get as much experience with that as my daughter, but my daughter has built a support system of her own. And have you gone to any of the TAPS events?
Yep, I've been to 2 of their annual ones I used to live near DC, so they had them in DC.
So you've seen the children's programs?
Yes, where they have a military person that's basically buddy-buddy with them during the entire program.
My daughter has not only attached herself to several of those mentors, but one in particular has become like a second pseudo-father to her. He's come down for different band competitions. He's met her on different events that she's gone to and that he was nearby. But more importantly, if I call him and say she needs to talk or she's having a bad day, within 24 hours, he's got her on the phone.
That's amazing.
Even when he was deployed, I could reach out to him and send him a message. Within 24 hours, he's reaching back to her. So I think the biggest thing for all of us out of the TAPS is the family quality that we get from others. But that program for me built that within, because I have widows that I can reach out that know the hell that I've been through and be able to talk to them about it because I know their stories, they know mine at this point. And it's not the glass over that you get at. As much as I love the other TAPS, you can't always tell your story to the detail that we could there because you don't want to trigger somebody else.
You don't want to scare them off. You don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. I totally get that feeling. That was TAPS when I first went there. I was playing music and they decided to put me in a hotel room. They'd rented out the Gaylord at the National Harbor. And they were like, hey, we're going to give you this awesome room, but, we're hoping that you'll essentially host some of the siblings up there afterwards. That was one of the most, I'd never felt more heard in my life than with that group of Gold Star siblings. Cause I'm like, we all had these weird feelings like, did he really die? Or like, could he be on like a secret mission and come back somewhere? Or, you know what I mean? Cause we all had these, we didn't actually get to see anything happen on our side of stuff. So we had these questions and like, all my friends are like, dude, you're fucking crazy. But they were like, no, I had the same friggin' thoughts.
Right.
And it's that validation of you are not crazy that really helps. And that is another reason I'm doing this is for my mother, who has constantly just had people telling her that she's crazy for one reason or another. And these are people that have not been through this process. They don't know what it's like, and they don't have any rights to tell her one way or another how she should feel. So she was not really, the rest of my family did not get involved in TAPS, which probably would have fixed everything if we're being honest, because sometimes you just need to have that open communication, figure out what's going on and accept help. But I did, and being able to understand that my emotions were in line with everybody else's made me feel a little more normal. I tried to get my other brother to do it, and he was just like, nope, no way. And that's, there's only so much you can do to get somebody to try to get help. But again, I'm going to be talking about TAPS, I'm sure, a ton on this program, just because I am a big fan. I did step away from them for a while just because it became too much. And I'm sure you understand too, that it becomes a point where you're just like, I have to step back and remember who I am.
Yep.
I am somebody more than just a Gold Star, family,
Spouse or family member, yes.
Whatever it is, and kind of find my own place. I think I'm close to being where I need to be. We'll see. I'm not sure we're ever actually where we need to be. So let's see. With family and friends, did anything change with your relationships there? Did you have anybody that just decided to up and dip because it was too much, or had things that got closer together? I know that in my realm, it's all over the place, so I assume it's likewise.
It's all over the place. Unfortunately, I had hoped, being my kids were the last of my husband, that his family would, take them in and be more part of their lives, want them. Unfortunately, as many doors as I try to keep open, you see them one by one, they dipping and isolating my kids away from them. Unfortunately, I know they don't always agree with what I say or what I do because, again, they grew up in that aspect you don't talk about this, especially this. This is not something we talk about. We
Yep.
don't discuss it. We just, let them rest in peace. Unfortunately, I would rather scream it loud and clear because if I can stop one family member and, from going through what we're going through, because it's hell, it is. And if I can stop them from going through it, I would rather scream it as loud as I can. As good as he is, he had his flaws. And unfortunately, he made a choice that can't be changed. And instead of, yes, he was suffering, yes, he was going through his hell, but now we're all going through, he's caused us that hell. He caused us more damage because of it. So they're not exactly excited about me. So they've isolated my kids. My mom and I started off on rocky terms. She came into the funeral, wasn't exactly what I wanted or what I needed at that time, so I pushed her away, but we've grown closer over the years. In all honesty, the family that I have are more friends that have become family.
Those are the best ones.
Yes, the family we choose.
Yes.
Daniel, her mentor, will always be family to us. We've got Pete and several others. We've got mentors that have unfortunately passed away that are family. I reconnected with my sisters, and that's better off. And I think it helps the fact that they have their own story through their mom, so they can understand a little more. It's not exact, but they're going through their own WTF moment with that. So we've grown closer. Unfortunately, yeah, a lot of family, a lot of friends that were there. Like you said before, they've moved on. It's not as relevant, for them as it is for us. They're not living in it like we are.
We had a neighbor tell my mother one time that it was finally time just to let the boy rest in peace.
Mm-mm.
This was like maybe 3 or 4 years after. Mind you, we're on 19 years, and my mom and I still break down in tears. You know what I mean? Like, there's no amount of time that makes the grieving better. You just kind of learn to live with it.
It's still there. It's still as strong as ever. Time just gives us more distance between it. It's that roller coaster. And TAPS, I learned this. Grief is like a roller coaster. There are those moments that everything's good, and then you go barreling down and you're in the rock bottom crying in that shower like it was yesterday.
Yep. You got it. There's certain triggers that just all of a sudden I'm just like, and it makes me so upset. And for my side of things, I didn't defend myself when people would talk about me, because I didn't want to tarnish my brother's name. I didn't want to ruin anybody's reputation because I had a nephew who I wanted to stay in his life. So I just was like, okay, if you're going to blame me on stuff, I'll take the blame. I'll be the bad guy if I have to be. And unfortunately, that left me with absolutely nobody, because everybody now assumes when you start taking the blame for things, people are like, hey, we're just going to keep throwing the blame on them.
Right.
And now that I'm 37 years old, have a family of my own, I'm just kind of tired of it. And I feel like, hey, I need to make sure that my story's heard and these other people's stories are heard too, no matter how uncomfortable it makes other people feel. And that is the key here, is we need to be able to speak openly without other people feeling uncomfortable. As long as you're not lying about it, you know what I mean? Then it's a truth that needs to be spoken. And anything that I say on here on my side, I got receipts for. You know what I mean?
Trust me, I'm the queen of receipts. I will keep receipts forever and a day.
You
Because
got it.
I'll
Eh,
be honest, family members have sent me stuff in DMs and stuff that wasn't exactly proper, you know, judging me because of the way I'm grieving, this, that, and the other. I've let my kids, I never forced them to take on everything when they were first happened. But over the years, as they've gotten older, they ask questions. I'm not going to hide anything. I tell them, you know? So they've learned more and more. My kids have read those receipts.
yeah, and I think they should. It shows the person they are. Look, if you're going to
There you
hold
go.
yourself to a high standard and you expect my kids to respect you, but they're going to have to know everything about you. And I have so many of my kids don't, if my father and my brother walked into my house today, my kids would not know who they are. If my sister-in-law came in, they would not know who she is. My son is 10 years old and he has not met basically anybody. And mind you, his name is Brian Scott Latendry, my son. So like it's full honor. You know what I mean? It's nothing but bringing my brother's name forward, and my son is fantastic. But I have no communication with the rest of the family now because they cut off contact with my kids. My
I
kids
hear.
don't have an uncle. My other brother is gone and missing, doing whatever the heck he wants to do. So this is, I tell everybody else, hey, if you want to be involved now, you need to be involved in my kids. My kids deserve to have an uncle. That's the hole they're missing in their life. And if you want to have a relationship with me now, it is now through my children. I think that's fair, personally.
100%. 100%. I'm telling you, my kids, they've had their numbers since the day he died. Before that, actually, but my kids were old enough, they had their own phones. Here, you don't even have to go through me. You don't like me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done enough research to understand that a lot of their dislike came from Sean because he was master of telling one side to one person, one side to another. I get that, whatever. I can't argue that point. He's gone. There's nothing I can do. They've had that number. You don't have to go through me. You don't have to involve me. And as far as I'm concerned, you're more than welcome at my house at any point in time. I'm not going to be the one closing that door. But do they call for the first 6 months? And they're like, what did we do? Honey, there's nothing you did. Have they called, sent a happy birthday text? Nothing? No. Do
Yeah,
I send them invitations for graduation? 100%. I can only do what I can do to show that I'm not closing that door and I'm not the cause of this.
yep.
You are.
I used to do the same shit with my brother. I used to send his kids Christmas cards, and he had stepkids too. So I'd send like $5 to each of them for Christmas.
Right.
Never sent anything. The only thing he ever got my kids is my son had before he was born, he gave him a dinosaur onesie. That's the only thing my living brother has ever done for my children.
That's terrible. The stuff I could say, ooh.
I know, and I sit back often and I think, like, people made me feel really bad about certain situations that I had nothing to do with. I had no control over, and I had immense shame and guilt for years because of. And at one point, I'm going to get to tell my story, and I'm going to have a lot of people that are really fucking unhappy with me. But I got to be able to live my truth because I've had so many people that have vilified me. You're not paying my bills. You're not talking to my kids. Those are the two things that make the most sense to me. That's what matters most to me is if you're going to pay my bills
Or my kids.
or handle my kids. Like, that's it. I don't need you to have a relationship with me anymore necessarily, but my kids deserve a support system. I've said from day one, you cannot have too much love in your life. Like, you can't be like, I'm not going to be involved in your kid's life because they have a step grandpa now. No, everybody is allowed to love them.
Right. I'll be honest, what was one of the first things I was told was by that side of the family, it was, you can move on now. And that's like, I'm not chasing after somebody else. There was nobody else in my life. And I'll be honest, my kids were my priority. I knew they would never be comfortable with having somebody else try to tell them what to do. Getting somebody.
They were in that awkward age too. That's not a good age to suddenly try to introduce
somebody else. Yeah. So when my kids were that, living in my house. No, just, would I go out? Yes, but we're not, doing that. And to be honest, as a military Gold Star spouse or, getting married again, we lose too much. We lose our benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And to be that dependent on somebody else again after the hell I just went through, I'll keep my own medical. I'll keep my own.
It really does feel
dental.
like it discounts the sacrifice, the fact that they say that if you get remarried, you lose your benefits. Like, you all don't understand the sacrifice and the heartache and the relationships lost from this. And then you say that if I do make another meaningful relationship, I'm not allowed to do anything about it.
Here's the one thing. I was 41, so my husband and I were a week apart, so he was a week younger. He was 41 when he passed. You have widows that are in their 20s. Are you telling me they can't get married till they're 57 without losing anything? I only have to wait 16 years. But these widows are 20 years old. They're babies. They're just starting out. You're telling me they can't remarry without losing everything? They lose so much. They're, for their kids, everything. Why? If our husbands die, that should be, those kids too. Their dad dies on active duty, they should have a lifetime ID, no matter what. They should have access to the same benefits their dad gave their life for, I don't know. I mean, they're slowly changing things, but just not fast enough to make a total impact at this point. You know what I mean?
I was fortunate enough Bonnie Carroll invited me one time to Quantico. She didn't tell me why. I don't remember exactly. She was like, hey, are you free? Can you meet me here at Quantico at this time? And I was living kind of close by. So I went there, and the Commandant of the Marine Corps and his wife, as well as Bonnie Carroll and somebody else, decided to sign a new partnership with TAPS right there. And I just happened to be the representative of the Gold Star siblings. But to me, that was the first indication of change of the Marine Corps was officially signing that partnership, understanding that, we need to have this additional program that maybe is outside of the military.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I love TAPS. TAPS does have a strong military sense, but you also can walk into TAPS as a civilian that does not know anything about the military, and you can still feel comfortable.
Right.
And that is super important. A lot of people don't understand that. I was complaining to my wife the other day that when I was playing music, I had a band called In Remembrance, so it was all about my brother. And whenever somebody would come up to me that was military and they were grieving and they had, usually PTSD on top of that, it got super intense to where I just stopped wanting to interact with people. I didn't want somebody to come up to me and be crying and being like, brother, I would die for you. But dude, I'm just the lead singer of a band. You don't need to die for me. You know what I mean? This is a really intense emotion that, I'm dealing with my own things, and I don't necessarily need to be your.
I don't need to deal with yours on top of mine. It's just too much.
So at one point, I kind of just stepped away and was just like, all right, I got to back off because this isn't fun anymore to constantly grieve. I personally don't even go to my brother's gravesite because to me, it turns into a whole thing. People come up to me, try to talk to me, and I'm not going there for that. Obviously, if I want to talk, I'll do a podcast now. Give me 2 seconds to double check my notes again here. All right. So for anybody that might be going down the same road that you have gone down, and maybe you've got a few years on them now, is there any sort of advice that you could give to somebody that is feeling these struggles or maybe is unsure of what's ahead for them?
TAPS was my connection to find the people that I need in my life, other suicide widows. I connected with family members, mothers, siblings, everyone, but to find those widows that understood my path, my journey, TAPS gave me that invitation to connect with them. I know, if it's civilians, it's harder to find that connection, but start sharing your story, really opening up and sharing your story. You find a better connection with people. I have a dark sense of humor, and that's my kids do too. A lot of that's related to their dad. We joke a lot. Unfortunately, that's just the way we heal. But that relates to other widows who reached out and I've connected with. Even though we've been to TAPS, we've never connected through TAPS, but we've reached out through TikTok and connected. And then we start going to these widow retreats that, in North Carolina or I've done talks here in Florida to different veteran groups or military groups, and I take my daughter, which people are like, that's a lot of trauma for her, but she knows what she's walking into. She knows what I'm about to do. Because if you see her crying, see the effect on her, it makes you stop. It makes you reconsider. And I've had a guy come up and tell me after one of my talks he's like, I've been thinking about a lot of this, that my kids would be better off. Because that was one of the last words that Sean to me. You and the kids would be better off without me. I'm thinking divorce. He's thinking another thing. And he's like, I've been thinking a lot about this and considering it, but my daughter's birthday's coming up. He goes, your story really reached out and touched me because I don't want her to be going through what your daughter's going through. That's exactly why we do what we do. This is exactly why we talk. We scream it from the rooftops. It's exactly why she sits there and goes through this with me, because no child should be, going back through this. No wife should be watching their kids go through this. But talking about it connects me to other people. If I didn't put my story out there or have it come across TikTok, would you have reached out to me? Probably not.
No,
We
it made
wouldn't
it
have
it made it
connected.
easy to find you. That was my thought process here is, I've been holding back on doing this for a long time because I've been corrected so many times on the story that I've been told. And mind you, I am a civilian. I don't have military terms, you know what I mean? So
Right.
I've like told my brother's story and had people be like, brother, that's not quite exactly how it's supposed to be. I'm like,
And
stop
Hulk.
stop correcting me. Like, this is like, it just gets very frustrating. And I was worried that by doing this, I would, get corrected by family and all that kind of stuff. And I'm at the point now where I'm saying, fuck it, because I know that my
Who cares?
stories are true. And I don't care what the hell anybody else says. I'm going to tell you the story to the best extent and hopefully create some lasting stories for my kids and
Right.
for your kids to be able to reflect back on and be like, hey, this is some shit that my mom really went through. Maybe at the time they couldn't understand it, but now reflecting back on it, if they were to look at this years from now, which hopefully this will still be up years from now, they can
It'll be
understand
out there somewhere.
the depth of the sacrifice, though, because it does not just end, right? It just that burial, the depth is so much deeper on every aspect. People just, I have a hard time expressing just how true that is.
Well, here's the thing. My story, even though it's the same person that we lost, my story is going to different from my daughter's. My story, her story is going to differ from my son's, because they experience from different views, different avenues, and different relationships. So
You got it.
it's not that your story is wrong. It's just different than this person's, because it is a different aspect of, I look at it from a wife's view. You're looking at it as a sibling's view. They're looking at it from a daughter or a son's view. A parent's view is going to be different than all of ours. I'm sure your mom's story is probably different than yours. And it's not that they're wrong. It's a different point of view that we're looking at. It's a
and
different
they're all
relationship.
valid. They all need to be spoken, I think.
Yes.
That's where the point I got to is I'm just like, if you want to correct me, that's fine. But I got to get this out. I've held it in so long, and it's eating me away. It's already I got no family left anyway. So like, who's gonna get mad at me? Y'all gonna come at me and stop seeing me? Okay,
Already
threatening.
there. Yep.
If you send me a letter, it'll be the first letter I've gotten from you in 10 years. So
We're moving up in the world.
exactly. Let's see if there's anything else I can ask you. So how do you feel communities can better support spouses of the 22?
I honestly think that the military needs to bring more programs in, more. Had we, when we were getting out, had family members come in and talk to us, more of, I know when I was discharged, if we had brought families in, talked more about it, I think even safety stand downs, bring families in, talk about it. It's not the numbers on the board, you know what I mean? Those, we can ignore the numbers. I can tell you, active duty numbers in suicides is higher than veteran suicides. It's rampantly growing. It's not decreasing. Instead of putting numbers on the board, if we can put families in front of them, make it real, make it relatable. And that's something that, I don't know, from my own perspective, I think is something we need to do. Make this relatable. It's like going in and talking to school-age children. They relate better when somebody's in the auditorium talking to them than you trying to teach it to them on a board. So if we could, I don't know, some kind of program in that aspect.
Stop putting it in the shadows, bring it into the light, and talk about it openly. If we talk about it openly, it will absolutely be able to prevent more people. I agree. I mean, we even look at these, you know how it is on social media. We got to be careful with the words that we say or else we get banned on it. We can't even talk openly there without getting censored or having our content be, put on lock. So I agree. I think the society in general, it has that terrible suicide word. We can't say it. But if we did say it, maybe there'd be a little less of it. Look, I know there's no magical fix for any of this, but it's nice to talk about and, to think. Let me see. I think I got one last question for you. So you probably already read it, but what does your self-identity look like for you today? How do you describe yourself today to people?
I'm still finding myself. I was married 20 years. I had given up everything of mine to follow his career, putting his career first. I've gone through Dive Master. I was working on getting an instructor when I was over in Guam. He gets moved back to the States. I give up everything, even though they offer me jobs left and right there, to go back with him to the States because I follow his career. I give up, everything I've done for his career. Finding myself afterwards has been hard. I have things that I want to do, but I don't know what I want to do because do I really want to do it? I've been struggling. I'll be honest. I've struggled with that aspect. I've gone for a psychology degree since his passing because I wanted to get into suicidology. And it's funny when people tell you you probably know more about suicide than most people because you've experienced it. You can talk about it. You can, get into it because you're experienced in it, not because you studied it. But as far as who I am today, besides being a mother, now, I've got, my kids are, 28 and she'll be 20, she's 24. I'm sorry, I have to rethink. They're getting too old for this. I'm a mother of 2 kids that I want to enjoy life at this point, and I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's okay, though. It's better to accept that and know that you're still searching for it than to, maybe declare something that you're not, which I feel like is, probably something I did quite a bit. I think that is a common theme that we find also throughout the Gold Star families is that we find ourselves trying to do a lot of different things to see where it is that we fit in because it feels like there's really no good place to fit in. I've done everything. I've done sales, I've done real estate, I've done music, trying to find my place to fit in. And really when it comes down to it, I feel most comfortable right here creating, stories about these guys, talking about it, and just talking to people in general, helping, get stories out. So
this is actually me doing these talks, me talking about, to be honest, that's it. That's where I'm most comfortable because I can tell you that story if I can help you, But yeah, it's an interesting journey.
it is. Well, we can go ahead and cut it from here if that's all right with you. And we will, I don't know how far I'm going to go with this, but it'll be fun to push it out. And your stories are wonderfully spoken and very heartfelt. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me about it. As we wrap up this episode of Gold Star Stories, I want to take a moment to deeply thank Kimberly Deck for opening her heart and bravely sharing her family's journey. Kimberly, your courage in speaking out sheds light on experiences that are too often left in the shadows. Your family's strength is a powerful reminder that every story of loss and sacrifice deserves to be heard and honored. And now I'd like to end with a special toast dedicated to Chief Warrant Officer Sean Deck, whose life of service and sacrifice has left an indelible mark. To Chief Warrant Officer Sean Deck, a man who gave 23 years to his country, and to Kimberly, who gave up her career, her comfort, and her peace to stand by his side, who now carries the weight of his memory in the strength of their children. Her sacrifice didn't wear a uniform, but it was still service. This is her story too. So here's to Kimberly, for surviving the silence, for speaking the truth, and for keeping his legacy alive. And here's to every Gold Star family member who is still standing. We see you, we hear you, and your sacrifice matters. Say his name, Chief Warrant Officer Sean Deck. Until next time, thank you for listening to Gold Star Stories.